Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prizepicks.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prizepicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play your first $5. And remember to go subscribe to CLNS Media. Bruins Ringside on YouTube. Lots of great content coming this offseason. Bruins Beat, Poke the Bear, Pucks with Haggs. And then make sure to go, if you don't like watching us, if you like to just listen, make sure to go subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And then, of course, lots of great content over with the Celtics All Access, and Patriots Press Pass over on YouTube. Those are both in full gear. And that is what you should go do. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Ty Anderson. Ty, what's up?
What's going on today? How we doing?
I'm good. I feel like you and I haven't talked in a long time. Like,
I know. Well, you're busy going to the Red Sox, and I'm busy not going to the Red Sox. I don't know how these things are related, but they are. I like the new bit, by the way. It didn't work the other day. The new bit of just tagging Connor whenever you go to a game now, because you never invite us. So that's gonna be the new bit.
That's right, the new bit. I chose not to invite you guys. I chose to just go by myself.
It's all right. You like going. You bring the scorecard. You like actually score. That's actually that's a low key skill that I wish I had. That like when there's like an older guy, typically like he's in the 60s, but like if you're younger, like whatever, like that guy who has like the program and he's like actually scoring the game, like that's like a great skill that I wish I had, honestly.
I agree. So my dad was the book guy for my teams growing up. Never taught me how to do it, which at the time I didn't want to, but now I'm like, I kind of wish I just had that skill. But so for those who don't know, the Red Sox do this thing like the monthly pass. They did it in April and May, and then they did it for August and September. It's just a standing room ticket for every home game for the 2 months to end the season. And me and a bunch of my friends decided to do it because we live, relatively close. And even if you go to a couple games, it ends up being worth it. And so that's what Ty is referring to, because I go to a lot of games, they're standing room tickets. But I will say though, Ty, a lot of guys standing there in the standing room area doing the scorebook. And there was one game earlier this year, we snagged seats down in the grandstand in the outfield, and there was like a row with one seat in it. I don't know if this person was a standing room ticket or not, but they were sitting in the one grandstand blue seat in the far back of right field, just doing the scorebook. And all I could think was like, that is bliss. Sunday afternoon, ripping the scorebook. You're all by yourself. You're in a seat. Sunday afternoon game. Like that's nice. I wish hockey had a similar thing. I wish hockey had a similar like scorebook, like hockey's not a chill environment, but if it was, I feel like that would be a fun activity.
Well, did you ever, and I think it might be different now at the Garden than it was, say, 6 or 7 years ago. I think now they're almost walled off, but if you ever walk by the official scorer's booth, like as they're scoring the game, it is pretty fascinating because like you'll have 5 guys watching the game, right? And they're all watching different parts of the game. And you used to be able to hear them say like, hit 57 Boston on 43, Edmonton, like whatever, like something like that. Like you could hear them doing that. It was pretty interesting. I think now I want to say there's like a wall or like a partition sort of separating them from like the rest of the press box. But it was always fascinating to me to watch. Like I'd walk by to get like a water or whatever, and they'd be like debating, is that a hit or is that a missed shot? Is that a block? Like I kind of always enjoyed, that kind of process. And yeah, the baseball, the closest thing we have in hockey to that beyond the scorer's booth is like the official scorer's table is like the coach will take out the notepad, write something, and put it back in his pocket. I'm always like, what are you writing? I want to know what you're writing. I want to know more about that, but some things are some mystery, man.
I think what they usually write is who was on the ice for the goal against, or who was on the ice for the goals for. Like I don't know why NHL coaches still do it, because it's so like you have guys who can do that. But I think it's instinct for coaches where it's like, these guys were on the ice like 53, 47, like blah, blah, blah. And like, I just, and who were they against? I think that's what they are writing. I know it is at the prep and typically college levels. So I assume that's what it is.
I always wonder if they're like writing it down, like they want to give it to the video coach to be like, hey, can you highlight this shift, please? I want to see it again. Because there is so much tech, right? Like, and so I always wonder, like, it's like, this guy is an ass and I don't want to play him anymore.
I hate playing against Alexander. Never again, please. I
plant plant drugs on 16 FLA.
Please do. Like take the loosen the blades on FL16's skates.
You find the notebook and it just says Kachuk ... murder ? You're like, what could that mean?
How do we legally kill him? I could see it, especially this Bruins team. But yeah, so I have you're right. I need to take you and Connor to games more. I absolutely
That's
do.
okay. I don't want to go.
No question. Well, you
I don't even want to go. No, that's the whole bit. I actually don't want to go.
Well, you're a Cubs fan. You're not even a Bruins fan. You're a Cubs fan. So.
Yeah, and my bullpen is trying to kill me now, so it's a lot of fun.
That's right. Well, the Red Sox are certainly doing their best to want to kill me as well. On Friday, I was doing a podcast with Haggs, doing pucks with Haggs, and I was sitting there and I was thinking. And my first thought was, "Oh my God, Haggs never stops talking." I'm kidding, of course, but my real thought was, as he was going through what the bottom six might be, I'm like, scribbling out on my notebook, this line and then this line and this line and then potentially this line, and you've got like so many potential bottom six lines, and you have so many guys who are in the running for that. Guys you signed, guys you had in-house, guys you had on the roster last year up in Boston. And it kind of makes me think, like, you can't have everybody play. Some guys shouldn't be in Providence. Do they make a trade up front at some point? I mean, it's good to have a lot of something, but it feels like you have so much. Do they try to make a deal with someone? And if so, who do you think it could be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I kind of entered the offseason saying there was no way that you were going to have both Matty Poitras and Casey Mittelstadt make your roster out of the gate. And now the obvious sort of caveat there is that, well, you can put Poitras in the minors. Like you can still do that if you want to. And so that could delay your decision there. But if you want to get those guys going, if you want to get the minutes, like this is kind of probably the year to do that, you would imagine, right? Like the expectations are kind of lower than they have been in years past because you missed the playoffs a year ago and you've bought some time here. I think with the great hope of James Haggens, like, your fans are kind of like, oh, we got some guys, they're coming, they're on the way. The cavalry is coming. So in a way, it kind of allows you to give those younger players more minutes. But to your point, where do they play? How can you throw them in your lineup? And so, Mittelstadt being on this roster has always felt kind of like a weird fit. Not that he played poorly necessarily, but it's just, what do you want him to be? Does he make sense for your team? Does he line up with your timeline? That's kind of been the question I think that a lot of fans and people that watch the team have kind of had because, he is young, yeah, but like, okay, this is now his third stop, his third team. You listen to Marco Sturm on Felger and Maz, and he kind of says, yeah, Mittelstadt will see. And you're like, Mittelstadt will see. This guy making almost $6 million. And you're saying, we'll see? Like, and so that opens the door. I think, especially when you look at some of the other guys they have and guys you want to get a look at. And so I've always looked at that as kind of an odd fit, perhaps, and one that you look at naturally and say, is that guy part of your plans in the future? But also, how do you utilize him, right? And what's the domino effect? You have Pavel Zacha as well, who you've heard him linked in trade rumors. I think the fourth period has him like number 8 or 9 on their trade board, saying that Boston has surveyed the market on him. And so it's like that grouping, right? Guys that are like good, not great, and not old, but not young. Like it's that kind of middle grouping there that you look at and go, all right, like, is it one of those two? That feels like the most obvious given where the Bruins are and where they could be going and perhaps the adjustment of their timeline as a true Stanley Cup contender.
Yeah, my thing with Zacha's always been, that cap hit is so good for, I think, what he brings. Like PK, power play, plays with Pastrnak, can play the middle, can play the wing, like pretty much does everything. And if you get 45 plus points out of him, it's like, that was well worth. That's a value contract. And like, that's why I'm in no rush to deal him. I think my only way to my only reason I'm dealing him is if you're getting a direct replacement for Brendan Carlo, or you're packaging him for someone clearly better. Like that's my Zacha trade if that happens. And both of those are kind of highly unlikely, at least of now. Like, because I don't think you're dealing him for a first round pick right now. You have enough of those coming up. I guess if you stink this coming year and it's the deadline and someone offers you a first and like a top prospect or something, then yeah, that's when you would listen on that. The Mittelstadt Patra thing's a very interesting observation by you, because you're right. Mittelstadt is a weird fit on this roster. He's not a typical Bruin. We saw the Bruins kind of acquire those types of guys and types of prospects at the deadline last year, and then draft a lot of those types of guys in June. And what I wonder is, like, do they go into training camp and they let Patra sort of try to prove himself as a top 6 guy? And if he does in camp, then they move Mittelstadt, because Mittelstadt to me doesn't make a lot of sense as your third line center. You have enough of those, be it Minten, Patra, Corrali. Like, you have enough guys down there, and there are tons I'm not even mentioning. Beecher, Kastelik, like, you have a lot of those guys, Hustendinov, who could potentially fit that role. So, like, Mittelstadt's not going to be your 3C, but if Patra plays well enough in camp and forces them to put him as the 2C, like, do you see that as potentially the domino that gets Mittelstadt to get dealt?
Well, I think that,
by the way, it's also not a guarantee that Patra does that. Like, I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying, like, hypothetically, if he did.
I mean, you kind of hope that he pushes for it, right? Like,
Yes.
I think that, I've said this before and I've written it, but I think if the Bruins could have a redo, they'd probably send him back to the OHL during the centennial season and let him have another year of sort of uninterrupted development, because it didn't work out the way they thought it would. But he played his way into that spot, right? And so, like, do they want to give him more run here? It sounds like they were really happy with his progress down in Providence to end the year. And so does that give him a leg up now, the new first-year head coach? As relates to Zacha, real quick, like, just this is what I always have to come back to, right? When it comes to the Bruins and when it comes to their spending, and should this guy be worth it? Should he not be worth it? Do you trust the Boston Bruins to go out and find a guy that can put up 50 points at $4.75 million a year? Like, that's kind of the question, right? Like, because, you get into that kind of Goldilocks pattern of, well, this guy's not this guy's not that. And then you let Jake DeBrusk walk. And now you're like, oh, this market's kind of ass. And we're going to have to spend more money to get a player who is equally flawed or perhaps worse than Jake DeBrusk. And so that's kind of, I think the Bruins can sometimes Goldilocks themselves into a hastily made kind of trade where you're like, probably would have wanted to keep that guy and see if he can bounce back. And I think Zacha is a great example of that, Evan, because, like, think about a year ago, right? And think about the first 2 months of the year for Pavel Zacha. He had so many games where he was hitting the post, or he had a golden opportunity and it was a great glove save or a great, just denied, right? What if those fall? Right now, we're talking about a guy that's probably back to 20 goals, 50 points. Like, he's closer to what he's been here in Boston. And so, if you trade that for anything less than a king's ransom, it's kind of like, all right, well, now you got to use that money. Who are you going to use it on? And that's kind of the problem for a team like the Bruins.
Also, his contract right now is sort of the going rate for, like, a third liner.
Like, real quick, to your exact point, he's making the same amount of money as Vladimir Tarasenko, as Kyle Palmieri, as Jordan Eberle, as Jason Zucker, as Alex Tuch. And Tuch's going to make a lot of money next year. But, like, that grouping, those are all pretty new contracts. And that's kind of the going rate for what those players are.
Yeah. And I would say Zacha's more valuable than some of those guys. I know that sounds kind of stupid, but, like, it's PK. He can take draws. Like, he fits anywhere. And I think that's a valuable commodity for what that price is. And it's not like you have no firsts. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you had no first the next 2 drafts, you'd say, okay, yeah, that's a great contracted deal for a first. Like, I think that's worth it. But you don't have that problem. So, like, I don't think you need to be in a rush to deal him, as you said, unless it's for a king's ransom. And then you sort of get into, like, if Mittelstadt does, if Patra doesn't fully push in camp and he does go back to Providence. Like, I brought up the idea, do you consider trading Patra? I don't want to. I don't. Like, I'm only trading Patra if, similar to Zacha, where it's like you're getting the better player back. He's in a package for someone, or someone gives you an offer that you can't refuse. Mm-hmm. I'm not just dealing Patra to deal Patra, but I do wonder if his name gets tossed around, because he's still really young. So it's not like don't give up on him now. But I do wonder if we sort of start to hear his name in trade rumors if he doesn't have the camp that I think people want him to have.
I think that's a great question. And really, like, I think an example of kind of what you're talking about, like, I am listening on a Matt Patra trade if he is part of what gets me a acquired and extended Rasmus Anderson, sort of like the Hampus Lindholm trade, where if you were doing that, and you look at Calgary, and I got to admit, I'm not super familiar with all their prospects, but like you look at their NHL roster right now, and it's Nazem Kadri getting older, it's Mikael Backlund getting older, and it's, I believe that, they got Morgan Frost from the Flyers in a trade last year, who, is 26, 27 thereabouts, but it hasn't really become the guy that a lot of people thought he would be. And so, like, do they look at that down the middle and say, we could use a guy like that, right? Like, I think that's when you are okay with it. If you're trading that player to acquire somebody who you then immediately extend and project as part of your future core at a different position, then you do it, right? Like, you're not doing it just to get rid of the player. Like, I think that's something more along the lines of, like, Fabian Lysell. I don't believe that they believe in Fabian Lysell. I think that there is a lot of BS between those parties, and it may hit the point where Fabian says he wants an opportunity elsewhere, and they go fine, and it's a crappy trade for the Bruins just to give that guy a new lease on life in a different organization. Matty Potter's not that guy. You know what I mean? Like, he's still got levels to go and prove, and so the Lindholm trade, that was Vakanainen, right? Like, he was part of that. And it was Vakanainen, the John Moore contract plus.
Wasn't Axel Anderson? Was he involved in that? Or was that someone
He was. And so, like, if you're doing that kind of trade, but you're getting somebody like Rasmus Anderson, I'm on board with that. But that's not a guy that I'm not saying, oh, we got to trade Matt Poitras. And I'm not saying you're saying this, but I'm not saying, like, I got to trade him because you don't have a spot for him right now. Like, you still have time with a player like that, but you do hope that he pushes. You know what I mean? Like, how much different are you feeling right now if Matt Poitras comes into camp, has a great camp, looks stronger, is not getting knocked off the puck as easily, is showing a bit more speed, like it's just kind of becoming more of a game-breaking middle six option for you. I think it greatly changes the complexion of what you currently have right now, because right now you look at this roster and you're kind of like, I don't know where all these pieces fit. Like, you desperately need an X factor to kind of break through there and be like, oh, wow, we can actually maneuver this in a lot of ways now.
Yeah, and I think Poitras, his strengths, his IQ, his vision, like that makes wingers better. And if he can really utilize that, if he can grow into that, you're going to make kind of underwhelming wingers potentially a little bit better. And that's a net positive for them. And if that can be the case, that's a really good thing for them. I just don't know. Like, I as we sit here August 18th, we don't know if that's going to happen yet or not. But again,
I think, to your point, sorry, like, I think that Trent Frederick looked the best he looked all year with Matty Poitras. Like that, like, to your point, like that's how you, if you can build up a Tanner Jeannot, I mean, all right, now I'm going to eat crow on a Tanner Jeannot.
That's right. It rhymes too. I want to get into that in a second. But another interesting thing is, like, when they acquired Victor Arvidsson, he has a year left on his deal, a little older. He's someone who makes a lot of sense as you deal him at next deadline as a rental for a team that's going for a cup, and you get back more than what he's actually worth. Is that a first? Is that a top prospect? Whatever that might be. But, if they are in that spot, which I think they will be, not awful, but, projected to pick like 11th, 12th, 13th. And they're sort of, they don't suck, but they're not in the playoff race, and they're going to sell. I wonder if then, Arvidsson gets dealt, and I assume Arvidsson's in that top 6 for most of the season, or at least to start. Maybe that's when a Poitras jumps in. Maybe that's when a younger guy, we'll get to Blümel or a guy like Steves in a little bit, but, like, is that when those guys jump in, and do the Bruins look and say, well, maybe Matt Poitras starts the year in Providence, but if things go the way we think they might, Matt Poitras might be in the top 6 for the last 2 months of the season, and that'll sort of be his development. I'm curious if that's something that they might take a look at as well.
Yeah, I mean, they totally could. I think, assuming, the worst, right? Like, let's just say they're not a playoff team, right? So let's operate.
What if they go winless? What if they go 0-82?
Yeah, what if they go? We weren't going to go 83-0 or whatever it is.
That's right.
but let's say they're not a playoff team. The best case scenario, to your point, would be like they're like the Utah Hockey Club a year ago, which finished with 89 points. Which, like, you look at that and you're like, wow, that's almost a playoff team. They're 6 or 7 points out of the playoff picture in the West, but then they win the lottery as best they could. They move up the draft board, and you're like, whoa. all right, cool. Like you got something here, right? Like that's probably the best case, worst case scenario for them. You know what I mean? Like if we're looking at the as the worst case scenario, but what is the best worst? That's probably it. Is like you finish 6 or 7 points out of the playoffs, but you win the lottery to the best of your abilities. You move up 10 spots, and you're picking in the top 5 again. Not saying it's going to happen, but that'd be the best case it could. But secondarily, like if that happens, all right, well you got to see some young guys kind of pop through. I think that's my greatest frustration with last year. After the deadline, they make the right call. They sell. They trade off guys. But then they play a second line of Vinny Lettieri, Casey Mittelstadt, and Cole Koepke. 2 out of those 3 guys are pending UFAs and are now with different teams. Yeah. What did that do for you? That didn't get you any closer to knowing what you had with certain guys that you want to be a part of your future. You hoped are part of your future. And so I think that's something that, part of it might be by design. You want to tank as best you can without outright tanking. But if they are back in that spot, like to your point, you got to find out what these guys are. You just have to, right? Like, it's just not a knock on the AHL. It's not a knock on the work you guys have to put in down there to like get up to the show. But I got to see if a player can play with NHL players before I'm like, oh, he's not an NHLer. Like, I got to see it. I got to see that before I make that call, because if it's only, oh, you got to thrive in the AHL and then thrive in the NHL right away, then we never see Brad Marchand make it to the NHL. He had a 20-game run in 2009, 2010. He had 1 assist in those 20 games. Like, if that's the rope you're going to be given, you're not going to produce a lot of NHL players that are younger. You're just not going to.
No, not at all. Not at all. I want to get into breakout candidates because that's a huge thing this year. I think there are some guys that, if there's any interesting storyline this year to watch, it's who could break out throughout the season. But first, I want to give a shout to our good friends over at Prizepicks. This episode is brought to you by Prizepicks. Preseason football is underway and college football is here, so don't miss any of the action this season on Prizepicks. I am a believer in Drake May. I think Drake May is going to have a really good season. He's someone that I'm going to be looking towards on Prizepicks every single week. Steph Diggs, I'm curious about him too. And what he could bring, his yards every week. Are they, where are they going to be set? I'm probably taking more. I know with Drake May, I'm probably going to take more passing yards. We'll see as the season goes along, but that's how I feel right now. And I think you should go take it out or go check it out for yourself. Prizepicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. Prizepicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prizepicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. And Prizepicks, they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So download the Prizepicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Run your game over at Prizepicks. So, Ty, in terms of breakout players, like, everything sort of went wrong last year. Almost everything went wrong. Swayman was terrible. A lot of injuries on the back end. Elias Lindholm goes down in November. McAvoy, who hadn't been amazing throughout the first half of the year, goes down for much of the second half. Up front, injuries, guys underperforming. Elias Lindholm, sort of chief among them in that top 6. But in terms of breakout players, like I wrote down a list of guys, but I'm curious, like when I say breakout candidates, who comes to mind for you mostly?
I really want to say that I do believe that Marco Sturm and Jay Leach could unlock something in Mason Lohrei. You look at the track record of the LA Kings, Jordan Spence, Brandt Clark, and I know Brandt Clark is like a top 10 pick, so like he was going to be that player probably regardless. But Jordan Spence is a great example of like a young, he's undersized compared to Lohrei, obviously, but like offensive-minded defenseman that was able to be developed and turned into something that I believe is serviceable for the LA Kings. So I want to say him, but I'm going to go back to our previous conversation, and I am going to say up front, and I look at a guy like Fraser Minten, and I say that because this is a team that they trade Charlie Coyle. They have Elias Lindholm. Elias Lindholm, you mentioned it, like he didn't have a great year. He ended it pretty strong, though, playing with David Pastrnak and Morgan Geekie. Assuming that stays together, it's going to be a lot of ozone run for that line, right? And so you might need another center who can emerge as a dependable two-way kind of option, and that projects to be Fraser Minten right now. Like, he looks like a guy that could be that kind of player for them. They hope he's that kind of player, and that might be his pathway to making the NHL roster. Like, you've got guys like Kaslik and Corrali, that are very defensive-minded, heavy D-zone deployment. But what about that kind of two-way guy? That guy that you can rely on in all situations. You don't have to give him a 90% defensive zone start time or start rate. Like, you can give him more offensive run. That's where I think a guy like Fraser Minten might have a chance to kind of break through and really carve out a role for himself on this team.
I agree. Minten's an interesting one because I think a lot of people look at like Minten versus Patra for that third line spot, for that third line center spot. But I keep going back, like Minten just is a different player. Patra's a little more of an offensive guy. Minten's a little more defensive. Minten's a little more two-way. And I think, has that size advantage on Patra for sure. And I think that's something that might work well on that third line. So I think Minten's a good potential breakout candidate. I don't know if, like, when I think of breakout, Low-Rye's a good one. Low-Rye's certainly interesting. Like, can you get him to be reliable enough in his own zone to where you can play him in more situations, which then would allow him to potentially get more points? I don't know if this guy qualifies as a breakout candidate because he makes a lot of money, but like if Elias Lindholm can up his point production 15 to 20-ish points, you're a different team. Like if they can unlock something with Elias Lindholm on that power play in the bumper spot, or if he can, kind of replicate the production he had with Geekie and Pastrnak at the end of last year, that is a breakout, and you're a different team. Like, and I keep going back to that, where like if you can get a lot more production out of him than you did last year, like you're going to be better. You're going to be much better in a lot of facets. Because again, I think one of the big reasons why they struggled last year was he didn't knock everybody down the way he was supposed to, right? Like it was going to be Lindholm's your definite number one center, and then everybody else falls into place. That didn't happen. If that happens this year, there isn't going to be that pressure on the second line, which looks a little wonky right now. I don't think everyone's feeling super confident in it. Whether if it is Zacha, Mittelstadt, and Arvidsson, like you don't want all the pressure on them to have to score as well. And I think, like, to me, maybe there is something in Lindholm. And I don't, and Connor's made this analogy before, like sometimes in baseball, guys, a big free agent contract and he's bad in year one. And like, that's it. Like he's done. He stinks. Although Trevor Story's been very good this year. But in hockey, it's different. They can take a guy a year to acclimate. And so it's not out of the question that he breaks out this winter.
I would agree. And the other example of that would be like, Linus Ullmark, his first 2 months in Boston, you were like, wow, this guy stinks, right? And then he turns it on around mid-November and saw for the races, and he becomes a great goaltender for your team. And I do go back to that late season surge with Geekie and Pastrnak for Lindholm. Like they scored, it was like 16 goals in like 100 minutes. And like that's crazy. That's crazy. Now, is that sustainable? Probably not. But you compare that to the numbers that Lindholm put up centering Marchand and Coyle, and it's just completely different. It's. I mean, I would imagine, I don't have the math in front of me, I would imagine that the former was like 4 times more productive than the latter. You know what I mean? Like in terms of like goals per 60, whatever math you want to use. Like I would imagine it was that much more productive. And so if you get even half of that, okay, well then Lindholm's going to have a better year. Like he's just gonna, right? And so I do think that he is a good pick for that, right? And he's not a traditional pick, but he is probably the most likely pick. And I think especially, Evan, you look at when they first tried Lindholm and Pastrnak was not playing well. He himself was not playing well, And so if you get the Pastrnak that you got from mid-December on, or I think early January on, like that's going to be a good player for Elias Lindholm. Like that's going to be an easy player to play with, and put up points and put up numbers. And I'm at the point, man, like where if Lindholm is good because he plays with Pastrnak, I'm okay with that. Whatever. I don't care. Like you just got to get something out of him. You know what I mean? And so like, if that is what makes him productive, okay, fine. I'm not sitting here going, yeah, Zach Hyman blows because he's good with McDavid. Like, no, that's part of the perk of having a superstar is you can build up other guys around him.
It's the same argument with Geeky. Oh, he's only good because Pasternak's finding him. Well, okay, that's fine. Like, they're not in a spot where you can, like, you they're not in a spot where you can't have that. You have to have that, so then just have it. That's fine. That's okay. That's the perk of having a guy like Pastrnak and how good he is and what he can do and the offense that he can create, not just with his shot and scoring, but with passing plays and vision and all those different things. So, like, I completely agree with you. And it sort of is the other part of it too, where it's like, I want to see that Geeky Lindholm Pastrnak line for an extended time. If they have a bad first 10 games, I don't want to see that line broken up. Like, that's probably your best option. I want them to have an extended runway. I want them to have time to sort of recapture what they had at the end of last year. And there's the argument too that, that team wasn't playing for anything. There was no real pressure those last 2 months. Like, I get that. They were not a hard opponent to play against. But there was still something there. And I'm not saying they're going to win a cup with that or anything, but let it cook for a little bit. Let that simmer. In terms of other breakout candidates, two guys they got out of the AHL last year, Matěj Blümel and Alex Steves. Two guys who have produced a lot in the AHL. They're around 25, 26 years old. I'm curious if you think either one of those guys steps in the lineup and makes an impact early.
Sorry, who is it? I was trying to find something.
Blümel and Steves.
Yeah,
I'm curious because like people are pointing to those guys, and I haven't seen enough of them to give you a yes or no on it. But I don't know. I'd be open to it, open to the idea of them in the roster. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to break out.
Yeah,
they're names to watch, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Blümel especially. Blümel played with David Krejci at the 2022 Worlds. They were on a line together. He's familiar with Boston. He's familiar with David Pastrnak. He knows Steve Spott, who's now going to be running the power play in Boston. So I believe that is a natural connection there. This also was a guy who led the AHL in goals a year ago. He's a very analytically driven person in terms of like he works with coaches who show him the mechanics of his shot and where is the best way to get his shot off. And not that other teams don't do that, but like, I find that interesting that this is a guy who can play left and the right side, but he dives into the analytics heavily to find out, okay, where is my shot best utilized? Can I be as effective on the right as I am the left, despite being a natural lefty shot? So I think that is that gives him a leg up, and I do think he's going to get a legit chance to make this team. Having basically picked Boston over Pittsburgh at the same kind of money thereabouts, like, that I feel like they're going to want to give him a legit chance to make the team. And sorry, I was looking up something. The Lightning, they had Alex Killorn, Steven Stamkos, and Ryan Callahan as a line for a long time. I couldn't remember if it was Callahan or somebody else on the right wing, but like Killorn was really good with Stamkos when Stamkos was in his prime, but when Tampa won a cup, Killorn was on their third line. You know what I mean? So like when it comes to Geeky and Pastrnak, it's like, all right, well, this guy works for you right now. When you're hopefully a cup contender, he's probably on a different line, but for now, it works. And so why break it up like that? Like I wanted to aid your point in that regard. And I wanted to look up the exact line combination because it was a really good line for them for a long time. I remember. But yes, with Blümel, I feel like that's a player that is their kind of guy. Shoots the puck, has a heavy shot, can play all situations can play both sides. Like that just sounds like a Bruins depth kind of addition right there, in my opinion.
It does. And the Bruins are sort of due. I mean, Geeky has certainly been a guy they went out, they found, they identified, undervalued. Zacha, similar type thing, undervalued, even though he's a former, top 7 pick or whatever it was. They are kind of due for finding another one of those guys. They're due for and the Lightning were really good at this for a long time, where they'd pull someone, like, who is this? And they have, 20 goals or something. I'm not saying Blümel is going to do that, but they're sort of due for that. They're sort of due for, and to sustain success, you sort of need to be able to find those guys. And I don't want to say off the scrap heap because that's not, he's not off the scrap heap, but a guy that's sort of undervalued. And I'm curious. I think that's someone that they look at Blümel as that type of guy. And it's interesting because, like, back to your point about like that Lightning line with Callahan and Killorn and Stamkos, like it is true when the Bruins are a cup contender, you expect Pastrnak still on that first line, but you hope Haggs is that 1C or someone else who's high end is the 1C, and you've got a strong left wing on the left side, and that you're a cup contender then, and Geeky's your third line right wing or third line center or third line right wing, or Lindholm's your third line center. Like, but they're not there yet. They're nowhere close to that. And I think you just have to be okay with what you got. And this is what you got. I want to get into someone else who could be a potential breakout candidate, which I think you and I didn't like this person coming in, but I want to just go back in time.
Didn't like them.
I think you can guess who this is going to be. But first, friendly reminder to everyone to go subscribe to Bruins Ringside on YouTube. We have a lot of great stuff coming. Bruins Beat, Pucks with Haggs, Poke the Bears. Season ramps up. Obviously, 2 podcasts a week for each of those shows. Ty is on some of them as well. He is great on them, so make sure to go subscribe. And then if you don't like watching us, you just want to listen, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts from. And then obviously there's a lot of great content that is non-Bruins. If you're a Celtics fan, if you're a Pats fan, Patriots Press Pass, Celtics All Access, all on YouTube. Those channels are always pumping out videos. So make sure to go subscribe over there. I was talking about Tanner Jeannot. And if you go back and look, when he was 24, second year in the league, first full season, 21-22, 24 goals, 41 points in 81 games. Now, this might make everybody feel old, but that's like 4 or 5 years ago now, which is bananas that 21-22 is that long ago, but it is. And since then, at the time, I remember people thinking, this is Tom Wilson. This is the next Tom Wilson. This is the guy you want to get. The Lightning gave up a ton to get him at the deadline in that 22-23 season. And in the 2 seasons since, even that 22-23 season, really not much production-wise. The advanced analytics don't provide much of a better look at him either. But, like, is there a chance? Is there a chance Tanner Jeannot could potentially, I'm not saying put up 41 points, but can he give you 25, 30, potentially 35? Like, is there any chance you could see that?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just going off the recent history, right? You mentioned the 41-point season, but since then it's been 18, 14, and 13. So he's going in the wrong direction, unfortunately.
Clearly, yes.
He's I have
on track for 11 points this year for going off that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, quick math. I do feel like, and this might be unfair to him, I admit. I feel like 30 points. 30 points. That's what I want. I want 30 points. And how I got there is every other forward who has some form of trade protection had 30 points a year ago. So you're getting trade protection. You're getting paid. Despite your numbers going in the wrong direction, you have term. 30 points. I feel like that's fair. Because he's not going to play in the fourth line. He's going to be on their third line at the very lowest, in my opinion. I just feel like he's like that fourth line is going to be some combination of Corrali, Beecher, Kastelik, Isamon. That's going to be their fourth line.
Agreed.
So he's going to play third line, or he's going to be a healthy scratch. And going off what we've talked about here, probably the best place for him is to be a third liner protector. And I use that in quotes because I don't think these guys can protect and play hockey at the same time. I think rats are rats. They're going to be rats no matter what.
Agreed.
It's great for after the fact, but it doesn't do anything to prevent the injury from happening. But I think they're going to say, hey, you go protect Fraser Minten or Matt Poitras, and then you put a Blümel or a Steves or a Lysell if they haven't given up on him. You put that guy at right wing, and that's your third line. Jeannot and 2 younger guys or unproven guys that might need a little bit of physicality to make them feel bigger out there, right? And now, does it work? I don't know. But if that line can play, you should get a natural bump in your point production just by touching the puck in some fashion, right? Like you'd hope so. And so I think 30 points is where I want him to be, because that's what his peers who have no trade clauses have done. And so I want to see that. And is that fair? Is that unfair? I don't know. But if he does that, listen, I'm happy. I'm happy with 30 points. I really am.
I don't think 30 points is unfair. That's not unfair. 5-year contract? No, that's for a third line left wing. 30 points should kind of be like the floor. I know, is that too much to ask? I don't think 30 points is insane. I know that he hasn't been great the last couple of years, but he's still in his prime, technically. And if he is with a Minten or he is with a Poitras, or if Blümel's on the other side, or productive young players, Like there should be production there. There should be expected. I'm completely with you on that. But
I mean,
there are a lot of
Justin
guys.
Brazeau put up 20 with the Bruins, and he had an awful, miserable year. And so,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that hard, honestly.
I forgot about Justin Brazeau. Oh my God. But even like, if Mittelstadt sticks around and they don't trade him, what's he? Is he a breakout candidate? Could he be considered a breakout candidate? Like he's another one that I look at. If he hits, if you can get him to be a productive second line center who's acceptable in his own zone, but creating plays in the other end, like, is that a breakout guy too? Like he's another one that if he's still on the roster come opening night, you hope that he breaks out. He's another one, I think.
I wanted to look it up real quick. I mean, Matthew Olivier last year in the Blue Jackets had 32 points. Like Jasper Kotkaniemi had 33 points. Like it's doable for a bottom sixer. And so I feel like he should. It's just, who do you playing with? You mentioned the analytics. Like you do a deeper dive on like his skating. Like he's not the fastest skater, and so like, can he keep up with his line mates? Is that another, piece of the recipe here that we have to figure out? Like, can you put him with good skating line mates and still get something out of him? Right. Like that's kind of like the part that is, the game's only getting faster, right? And if you can't keep up, it's going to be hard to ice you in a lot of roles, that you want to play a guy. And so like that's another part where like I want to say that he can play with a Poitras or a Minten or a Mittelstadt, but what if they're too fast for him and you can't keep up?
Yeah.
Like now you're getting into real ugly territory where it's like, holy shit, you gave a guy 5 years and to be a fourth liner, like that's the worrisome sort of element there. But with Jeannot, I do think this is worth noting. Talking to people in the orbit, they really do believe in the fact that like he can be an accountability kind of guy, right? And he's going to take some of the pressures off Nikita Zadorov and Mark Kastelik, because I mean, you've covered games, you've been in that locker room. Mark Kastelik, while pretty mean MFer on the ice, is not really that guy off the ice. He's very soft-spoken. No, he's very thoughtful. Like he's a very nice guy, right? Can he be the guy to rattle cages and get guys going? Nikita Zadorov, I think they want him to focus on being an impact top four defenseman. I do firmly believe that they want him to focus more on hockey than sending a message, right? And is Zadorov a guy that players want to follow? Like I'm not disputing that, but I'm saying like he's got his own game to kind of sort out here. And I think the Bruins want him to do that. They want him to be more of an impact guy on the ice. And so that leaves a perfect spot for Jeannot to kind of be that guy and wake the players up and rattle some cages. First year David Backes rattled cages. He did. He didn't mind being a bit of a prick. You know what I mean? Like, and so maybe they need
really nice guy off the ice.
Yeah,
really nice guy, Joe. He could do it.
Dude, he wasn't afraid though of like telling players like, hey, you got to pick it up here. This is not good enough, And so I think with Jeannot, like he might be a guy whose presence allows other players to maybe unlock their own game in some fashion. That is obvious what the Bruins are hoping. I think that's why they're telling me that. But they firmly believe that like he can be that kind of guy because of how mean he can be and how nasty he can be. And so I think it will do them good in the locker room. It's just, what are the on-ice results, right? Like if you're signing him hoping that he's going to scare the boots out of Sam Bennett, I mean, you're going to be sorely mistaken here,
yes.
And so I just think internally he might bring more value than on the ice, but you do want to get something out of the on-ice factor, and I think 30 points is a fair number.
Well, this was something that we talked a lot about last year, but they were missing. It's like more veteran guys that can keep guys accountable in the locker room, that can be examples, that can be leaders, that aren't wearing a letter. And they went out and got a bunch of those guys. And that's why I am curious, like, what are they this year? I think you can cross off the 7-1 losses and the compounding losses where it's like 2-1, and then you go and grab something from the fridge and you come back and it's 5-1. Like I think we can safely say that's not going to happen this year. And that's just sort of more leadership, so to speak. So you're right. I think Jeannot absolutely brings that. One other thing before we go, or
Yeah.
no, what were you gonna say? I don't.
No, I was gonna say, like, because you, this is not a knock on these guys at all, but like, if Parker Wotherspoon and Jacob Lauko are getting into fights to wake your team up, like, you kind of have a problem with your team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you're gonna make those guys be your sacrificial lamb, so to speak, to get some energy in your locker room, like, you got a bad locker room. And I think they were devoid of leadership a year ago, and so now you hope it's there, and you have a supporting cast member, right? Like, you got some guys that I think are good soldiers, and you got another guy who's a reckless, fearless MFer. All right, I'm gonna follow that guy because he's crazy. It might be a real thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, it works, and that's why I am curious with guys like Corrali, AC Mont, Jeannot. What are they? I think this is a team that is going to be tough to play against. You're just not going to be the most exciting team. They're not going to score a ton of goals. That's what I think they're going to be. Before we go, because we are getting to like the 45-minute mark, which in August is a very long episode, so I don't want to bore people to death. But you tweeted out this afternoon or Monday afternoon on LinkedIn. Shawn Thornton announced that he is leaving his post with the Panthers, says he's not quite ready to share what's next. What a funny way, though, announce it on LinkedIn. Because Shawn Thornton is very active on LinkedIn. Like,
he really is.
His thing. It's crazy. But then in parentheses, you put, I have no idea what he's doing next. I just know his name frequently comes up with a lot of you in regards to a job back here. What are you thinking? What are you thinking for Thornton?
Well, so he's quick to remind you that he worked in the front office, not like the hockey front office of the Panthers, but he does have some experience in that realm. If he wants to do it, he can do it. I know that he still loves coming back here. He still loves the area. If you're the Bruins and you're trying to rebuild a culture, and guys like Zdeno and Patrice are happy being dads and marathon runners right now, but you want to bring somebody in who can be a voice for some players, like, you can do worse than Shawn Thornton, so I would wonder. I feel like his business acumen has gotten, it's better than people realize. And so I'd wonder if he wants to stay in hockey or if he has aspirations beyond hockey. But I think that's a natural progression, Evan, of where this front office is going to go. You have Cam and Don now, but as we get closer to those guys riding off in the sunset or getting fired, whatever it is that happens to them, you are naturally going to look at, like, I firmly believe this. The Bruins know what the Bruins know. And what do the Bruins know? They know Bruins. They know 2011. And so you're going to see more of those guys come into their front office. That's going to happen. Whether that's Z or Bergeron or McQuaid's already there, Kelly's already there. Like, Thornton,
and they didn't let Kelly go. They kept Kelly this offseason.
Right. And so tells me that if he wants a job here, they would probably find a job for him here. I can tell you right now that Zdeno and Patrice have jobs here when they want them. They just don't want them yet. Bergeron, from my understanding, is very happy being a father right now. He's making up on lost time. He loves going to his kids' games and just being around the rink, without the pressures of running a franchise. Chara is just doing his thing right now, and so
he is with the team, isn't he?
He's role? Like they're like figuring out what the role is still. Like, he's joining them, but like in an unofficial role. Like, he's kind of like ambassador right now. He's almost kind of like how Tuukka's role is. Tuukka, another guy in the organization right now. And so this is where the organization is going. It's just a matter of, is it here, or is it, is he doing something else with his life? There's a lot of 2011 Bruins, man, that are just in hockey now. I don't know if people really realize how far it is. You have Rich Peverly is the player development coordinator for the Dallas Stars. I thought he would have been a great candidate for GM had the Bruins moved on from Don Sweeney. Greg Campbell is the AGM in Florida. Johnny Boychuk and Dennis Weidman both work for the Islanders in player development. Mark Recchi was in coaching recently. There might be some more, honestly, that I'm forgetting. Shane Knighty, he's in broadcasting now, but there's a lot of guys that are still working in hockey well after their careers have ended.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, like, what they're doing now, because, like, I'm looking at the 2011 roster, and you covered that team. I obviously didn't. I was like,
yeah. What were you like? How old are you? Were you 15?
I was 12.
12. I was 19. So, I mean, I probably should have been covering that team. I was probably too young to be in that locker room.
But you made it. You're still there. Yeah,
I made
2011. It. Yeah, because 2011 I would be 12. I would have been 12. I'm 99. So yeah that's.
I think
crazy.
I'm still probably the youngest person to cover a Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I was in 2019. I was 20. So you had me beat.
So I was 19 still. That's weird, man. That is
you hold the record. I was so close. I was so close.
I was that little kid from the Miracle speech being like, screw them. That was me. People don't know it.
So just before we go, like team president for Thornton? Is that what you're kind of hinting
No. I mean, I don't know what he would do.
He has the business side of it. So like, would he even want to do that? I think he'd want to maybe be more on the business side of things. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
It sounds like he has something else cooking though. He doesn't want to reveal it yet. You know what I mean? So, we'll see what it is. But no, he wouldn't be like team president. Like, I don't know. Would he be like? I mean, again, I don't want to speak for anybody because I don't know what everyone's life goals are. But like, would he be involved in like Bruins charity work in some fashion? Like, I don't know what he wants to do. And so, I know he still comes up here though, you know, in the off season. So maybe there's something there, but it wouldn't surprise me, right? Those 2011 guys, they're all popping up with jobs in hockey. And so maybe he's next. It's just, you know, what is it? You know, he's an Ontario kid. Maybe he's going back to, and kid, he's a guy. He's a grown man. I don't know why I'm saying kid.
Ontario kid.
We're talking too much about Fraser Minten and Matty Poitras. No, does he go back to Toronto? You know, like, does he work for them in some fashion? He was a draft pick of the Maple Leafs. So like, maybe there's that, you know, like there's a lot of options for him, especially with the way the Florida Panthers have been run, the way that hockey has exploded down there. Like, you know, he probably has his pick of the litter, you know, in terms of where he wants to work. But I know the Bruins would probably say, yeah, come on home. It'd be a good, at the very least, Evan, it'd be a good PR move for them, bringing in a guy that the fans love.
It would. It absolutely would. Speaking of things cooking, what do you have cooking? What can people look forward to from you?
Dude, it's August. I don't know. I wake up every day going, I hope I have something to do today. Like, I don't know.
Put myself a job.
Yeah, what are you talking about? What I got cooking up? I don't know. Trash.
I don't know. Hey, go look at Ty's trash. Someone, if you can find where Ty lives, go jump in the dumpster and sort through.
Don't let him cook. What's he cooking? Oh, it's hot dogs and milk. No,
he's eating Kraft mac and cheese for the 15th night in a row.
Yeah, dude, I've been eating peanut butter and jellies like they're going out of style. No, I could just search my name, find me at 95thesportsbook.com. We'll be writing. I just don't know what. Like, we'll be writing though. I'll tell you that much right now. You can find me there on social media at @_Ty Anderson. Yeah, I'm all around. How about yourself?
Oh God, actually, doing Hockey Journal stuff's cooking.
August this is your time of year, man.
It's been busy, and we don't really have, like, I used to say, oh, the summer's quiet, and it is quieter than the fall and winter, but it's, you know, we're doing like 2 stories a day. So It's not like it's still it's moving. So I like it. And then obviously you get this.
Have you been doing the old, what is it, the Foxborough League? Is that still going on? Have you been down there for any of that?
I have. The Foxborough Prep Leagues every Wednesday night. They don't do the Pro League anymore.
Oh, really?
They have a 3-on-3 league at there, but that's not like serious enough that you go and like actually get anything from it. But the Prep League's pretty good. I've been down there last couple summers, so you get to sort of see. It's not, you know, the end all be all. It's summer hockey, but it's still, you know, good to see who's improving and different prospects like that. So yeah, but the Pro League is done. The Pro League, unfortunately.
Who's the next guy that I got to look out for as like being like the next big thing?
Oh God. Do you mean for like the 26th draft, or just
in general, locally? You know.
All right. I mean, there's easy name, Carter Meyer, Freddie Meyer's son. Carter Meyer committed to BU about a week and a half ago. Arguably the top 09 in the whole country, made the NTDP. I thought he was the best player there by far. Lottery pick. That's a lottery pick. It's from Winchester. So yeah, I've had prep coaches call him Jack Eichel. I think he's incredible. I think he is fantastic. So yeah, I think he's the next big thing to come out of this area and for people to watch. And I've been watching him for 2 years now. So yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy to watch.
He's the guy.
He's the guy. But yeah, that's Bruins Beat. That's Ty Anderson. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.